Hey guys, welcome to another episode of the Guy Code. I am Reynolds. Where now today's topic it's a big one that touches economics, politics, relationships, and even the future of our societies. Guys, we're talking about the declining global birth rate, feminism's role in it, and most importantly, how men are responding. Now, before anyone jumps to conclusions, I want to make something very clear. This is not a blame game. This is an exploration and an observation on my end. We're looking at trends, facts, and possible consequences, and we'll talk about this means for Kenyan men and men in general in 2025 and beyond. Here are a few facts we need to know. First, the birth rate decline is most noticeable in the Western world. Places like the US, most of Europe, and even some Asian countries like Japan. And this is why most of us, you have seen these trends on TikTok, especially, whereby there are several ladies who are commenting on the declining birth rate. It has been a subject that even personalities like Elon Musk have talked about. And now everyone is talking about it, including ladies on TikTok. Some are celebrating to be contributing to the declining birth rate. Some even have, these trends whereby they post a really nice, serene place like a beach, and they say it would be nice to spend some time here with an infertile man, where they can just, enjoy each other's company and with no fear of her getting pregnant. And it's a crazy trend, but most of us have seen it, and possibly it could continue to grow. Now, you may ask yourself why this country is well. If you listen to what many women in these countries are saying, from even some of the videos I've seen on TikTok, the reasons, and even YouTube, the reasons include the high cost of living. Apparently, the cost of living right now in the US and even Europe is very high, and some women finding it almost unaffordable to really give birth and raise children. Like that thought is even very intimidating for most of them. It's very expensive. Secondly, there are low marriage rates and high divorce rates, right? These ladies are thinking if they get to bring in a child, how sure are they that they will have a partner to help in the raising of this child, especially not just financially, but just with the day-to-day activities. Raising a child and leaving all that responsibility to one person can really lead to burnout. And some of these women have seen their mothers burn out raising them single handedly. And for some, it's just a desire to push back against any infringement on their reproductive rights, especially in pro choice debates. There are some feminists who, even though they may afford it, and one even has mentioned, even though they could afford it, they will just want to push back because, especially in the US, they feel that their rights when it comes to reproductive rights and pro choice rights and the Roe versus Wade, I think that's what it's called. I'm not sure of the exact case name. It has been an on and off debate in their Supreme Court. So the fact that it's up for debate, some of them feel so offended that they will not get involved in any reproduction to push back against these, infringement on their rights. Here's the one statistic that really caught me and puts it into perspective. In the US right now, childcare costs more than the average mortgage. Let that sink in. And 66% of the American parents say they are worried about their finances. Now, this is the prime Western world. That childcare, even though in this eastern part of the world, still developing parts, we say it takes a village. Well, for there, it takes institutions. And those institutions are not coming cheap at all. It costs more to raise a child than to have a roof over your head, something to think about for those who actually want to relocate there, who are already there. You can comment if this statistic is true. Now, some people point back to the 1970s when the contraceptive pill became widely available. They say that was the turning point, the moment when family planning shifted dramatically, right? When women first got the right to have contraception and get into the workforce, and now they could actually get to have their reproductive rights and get introduced to owning their own reproductive rights. Now, fast forward to 2025, and we've got something interesting and maybe controversial happening. Actually, as recently as this August, as far as this recording, August 2025, the Bill Gates Foundation is rolling out an 8-year contraceptive product for women in developing countries. This country, Kenya's president, has already agreed to introduce it to mothers here. Now, other countries in the plan include Nigeria and the DRC, two of the fastest growing populations on earth. In fact, there has been a statistic that there are certain 6 countries that will have a very high population by in the next maybe like 50 years. From their rates right now, they have the highest rates of population growth. Five of those countries are in Africa, and I think the other one is India still. Now, there are mixed reactions to this. The fact that the Bill Gates Foundation has been provided this product of contraception to women, especially in the developing world. What is the real intention? The claims are, they feel that in this part of the world, most women don't have access to very affordable contraception products and solutions, and they just want to make it easier for women to get to have these products. However, there are some countries like Namibia whose woman's president has pushed back and rejected these solution and these programs from taking effect in her own country. Does she know something that we don't? I would think so. And there are some presidents like ours who may have their own ulterior motives to accept these kind of programs. Some financial. In fact, I think for every Kenyan national will remember that our president really got to announce. I think it was last year, or yeah, I think early last year, about the development of a vaccination plant. I think it was also by the Bill Gates Foundation. So he has a couple of interesting projects that he has already began to roll out from by the time they even got to announce the most recent one, which is this one. And validly and reasonably, most people are also asking what is the long term effect, long term agenda here? Why target Africa so heavily? Is there some people who are there some people who feel that if the African population is growing too fast and their Western population isn't growing as fast, is it a possibility that certain, racial genes will get to be instead, reduce in numbers and end up almost going what's it called extinct? Yes, is that one of the could be one of those underlying concerns from the Bill Gates, and that's why he wants to come in? We don't know. It's a good question to ask. What do you think? But here's another angle. If Western birth rates keep falling, they'll need more people to keep their economies running. That could mean opening borders to immigration, which is the exact opposite of what many conservative governments in Europe and the US are pushing for right now. Most very conservative parties and political movements in the Western world are really pushing back against immigration. But now, if it gets to a point whereby their population is decreasing and ours is increasing, now they don't have enough people to fill in their workforce. What happens then? The developing world like here, we are getting to really polish our skills, have a skill set that can compete on the global stage and marketplace. Could it reach a point whereby instead of at this moment or years prior, where most of us have scrambled to go to these embassies, could reach a point whereby these embassies now are now inviting us. And now it's not about an interview process that only 10% of people get to pass and the rest of everyone else just pays and their money goes. Now they will need workforce and they'll get to invite people and pay them instead of making them pay. Would that be, wouldn't that be an interesting sight and experience to have? So, will economic reality eventually override political ideology? That's a big question. Now, here's something most discussions skip. If highly educated, high earning women are opting out of having kids, where does that leave us men? Right? Does it mean that men who want families are left mostly with average income or lower income partners? Does it mean men might avoid fatherhood altogether and therefore avoid things like child support, something many Western men have called a massive financial burden? And if fewer men are becoming fathers, how does that reshape society? Fatherhood isn't just about biology, it's about community, identity, and the way we pass down values. Something to think about. Where does that leave us if the most high earning, you know, highly educated women don't want to have kids? Some feminists and some ladies are saying, okay, there will always be someone or a quote unquote, what they like to call a pick me who will be glad to sire children for a man so that she may be accepted, or maybe she's looking for validation or any of the claims that they're and pushed against her. Such women now are the ones left to have children, right? Does that mean that for most of us men, we will have partners who aren't on our levels, and now if they're not really on our levels and they are very subordinate to us? Is that a setup that most of us might like? Possibly. So something that was meant to punish us just sets us up, or most of us up, for a very possibly convenient setup. You can't marry a lawyer or a doctor or an engineer because she's too high earning and well traveled to sire your kids. And so now you're left with someone who is not as educated and can be easily subordinate to you. For some men, this sounds like a very, very good setup. In fact, some men actively look for this setup. In such setup, they won't have someone who will really push and sometimes even bring them to face the strong arm of the law when it comes to child support, who can't sue them, might not have the muscle or the know-how to sue them and use the government's force and power to exploit some money out of them and any other kind of resource from them. Does that sound like a very bad setup for some men? Possibly not, because for most men who have really dealt with women who are high earning and high achieving, can imagine if your baby mama is a lawyer, the kind of drama you will go through. In fact, we know that there's a certain Kenyan public figure who has impregnated two women, each having two kids, and both of them are lawyers, and we know the kind of drama he's gone through. But in his case, he seems to like the drama, to each their own. So the main thing is that, and I wanted to point out, is what I just mentioned, that fatherhood isn't just about biology. It's not just about giving out baby, it's about community and identity. They say that fathers are the ones who actually help build your self-esteem, build your character. Not saying that mothers can't do it, but it's one of the significant roles that for most children, their self-esteem is built from their father. When you make your father proud, some even athletes and professionals, when they feel like they've made their father proud, that's like a milestone for them. It doesn't matter who else will critique them. And if anyone is living life, can reach a point where most people are critiquing you. Where do you run to? Where's your fort? If not yourself, you just remember that the person who raised you and wants to see you exploit your full potential is proud of you. And with that, you can forget what other people are saying. So back to the local scene here in Kenya and across much of Africa, population growth is still high. It's a good thing, but with global trends and policies like this Gates contraceptive program, I can't help but wonder, are we about to see the same patterns from the West repeating here in the next 20, 30 years? Possibly from Gen Alpha, and the Gen Z? Good thing to think about. For men, I think this is our wake up call. We need to think carefully about certain things that I want to share, and I want to know what your thoughts are. Our role in building stable families, not just leaving it all to women's choices. In fact, this covering one of the points that the Western women were talking about, that if they get to sire children, some of them don't feel comfortable and safe enough that they will have a support system to raise those children. Even though some might feel, oh, I'm financially stable to raise a child all on my own. You can say that up until you're waking up at 2 a.m. and you're the only one to wake up and you still have work in the morning because that's still you. At that point, you will really wish you had a partner with you. And this is why I call ourselves to really step up and be present and intentionally build stable families, take up our role. Secondly, what is our economic preparedness? Because there is financial strain is a major reason people avoid parenthood. Interestingly, the wealthier parts of the world, like the Western world, they're saying that the economy is quite harsh. How do we get to deal with this? How do we get to work around this? Should we have discussions with our partners about how to deal with the day to day expenses of life? Even though, of course, there are some ladies who say they will never think about or never even be open about to have a 50-50 discussion, even though 50-50 is a very binary way to see it and black and white way to see it. But can you actually get to open up that discussion and understand from both the man and the woman's point of view, as we build a family, how can we handle our economic preparedness and cover the cost of raising children, and how many? Thirdly, our political awareness, because these big population policies aren't random. They shape who will be the majority, who will have the influence, and who will be working in the future. If some of us might be having that kind of mentality and concern that might not be really clearly stipulated, that I feel that my race might end up extinct and my race population might decline when I used to enjoy being the majority. Now, in the next 20, 30 years, I might be the minority. How do we get to deal with such people and people who have such fears because they are there even right now? Does that mean they are bigots? Well, good question to ask, but wouldn't any of us be concerned if our population growth was declining? And who is to blame that they reached that kind of setup? you know. So as men, we always have to come from a point of our own accountability. Even as we're seeing this trend grow, and some ladies are celebrating that they are now having the upper hand, and even though in a quote unquote patriarchal system, they feel that in this area we can't quote unquote, enforce them to give birth, they still hold the cards in this area. Why? We have to ask ourselves, why is it such a thing to celebrate? Why is it always a thing about who has the leverage where and all the autonomy where, why is it that when you have the upper hand, it seems like it's pushed, and really rubbed in our faces, and could continue to be rubbed in our faces for a while? So I just want to end with this question. If the family model is changing, what kind of future do you want to build as a man? Because whether you want kids or not, these trends are going to impact your life, your relationships, your career, and the society you live in. This is the thing I want to leave with you guys and to just ponder on. I hope this podcast episode has helped you figure out a couple of things that you can think about and discuss. As usual, my Telegram group is Guy Called Kenya. My X account is same as Guy Called Kenya. I would really like to hear about your feedback and what you think about this kind of situation. And until next time, we shall talk soon. Bye.